The stars looked peaceful from space, but for Eli Carter, peace had ended the moment his ship was struck by debris. The control panels sparked and screamed, alarms blared, and the small cockpit filled with smoke. Eli tried to pull the emergency lever, but the system was already gone. Through the cracked glass he saw a planet below, dark green covered in mist and strange blue lights. He had no choice. He hit the crash sequence and prayed. The ship entered the planet's atmosphere, shaking so hard that Eli thought his bones would break. Fire covered the wings, turning the sky around him orange and red. Then silence is followed by a violent crash. The sound echoed across the valley like thunder. When Eli opened his eyes, the sky was black and everything smelled like burnt metal. He coughed, his head bleeding slightly. The front half of his ship was buried in mud, steam rising from every surface. He pushed open the broken door and stumbled out. The air was heavy, damp, and cold. He shivered and looked around. The forest around him glowed faintly. The trees were tall and silver, with wide leaves that shimmered like glass. A pale blue mist floated near the ground. Great, Eli muttered. Middle of nowhere again. He checked his wrist device and no signal. The distress beacon had died in the crash. His oxygen was fine, but the temperature was dropping fast. The ship's heater was gone, and the alien night was coming alive with strange sounds. Distant screeches, clicking noises, and something that sounded like whispering wind. Eli tried not to think about it. He had learned long ago that fear could kill faster than any creature. So he got to work. He searched the wreck for anything useful. A plasma cutter, emergency rations, a flare gun. Then he found a metal rod, sharp enough to use as a tool, and began clearing space near the crash site. He remembered basic survival training: warmth, food, water, shelter. Warmth came first. There was no fuel left, so he started gathering wood. The fallen branches were strange, soft on the outside, glowing faintly inside like something alive. But when he snapped one open, it was dry. Perfect for a fire. He stacked the pieces near the wreck, used the plasma cutter to spark them, and watched the small flame grow. It was beautiful. Golden fire against a blue mist. The warmth hit his skin, and for the first time since the crash he felt safe. Then he noticed the forest had gone completely silent. No more screeches, no more wind. Even the air felt still. The hairs on his neck stood up. He looked into the trees but saw only shadows. He turned back to the fire and froze. Eyes, dozens of glowing blue eyes watching from the edge of the trees. Eli's breath caught in his throat. He reached for his flare gun slowly, trying not to make any noise. The eyes didn't move, they just blinked one after another like a wave. He thought they might be animals, but something about the way they stayed perfectly still felt intelligent. He took a step back. The eyes followed. "Okay," he whispered. "I come in peace." He tossed a ration pack toward the trees, hoping to distract whatever was there. The packet landed softly. Nothing moved. Then on a whisper, not the wind this time. It sounded like a voice. He couldn't understand it, but it was low, rhythmic, almost like a chant. Eli's heart pounded. He lifted his flare gun slightly. "Stay back," he said firmly, even though his voice trembled. From the shadows, one figure stepped forward. Tall, slim, walking on two legs. It wasn't an animal. It was humanoid, but not human. The figure's skin reflected the firelight like silver metal. Long white hair fell to her shoulders and her eyes glowed brighter than the others. In her hand, she held a curved blade that shimmered blue. Eli's mouth went dry. The figure spoke again, her voice calm but commanding. He didn't know the language, but her tone said enough. "Don't move." He raised his hand slowly, the flare gun still in his right hand. "I'm not here to hurt anyone," he said softly. More figures appeared behind her, all women, all carrying weapons, all watching him. They circled the fire, moving in perfect silence. Their armor looked like it was made from animal bones and crystal. Eli could see faint scars on their arms, symbols carved into their skin. He realized with dread that lighting the fire was a mistake. The flame that had saved him from the cold had also revealed him to them, the planet's hidden hunters. The leader stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his. She said one word, short and sharp. The others echoed it like a chant. "Skyburner." Eli had no idea what it meant, but the way they said it sent chills down his spine. He took a slow breath, trying to stay calm. "I just wanted warmth," he whispered. But the leader tilted her head as if amused. Then she raised her blade and pointed it at his chest. Eli realized this was no random encounter. His fire hadn't just attracted hunters, it had broken something sacred. And as the blue mist thickened, he understood one thing very clearly. He was not alone on this planet, and whatever was watching him now had no plans to let him leave alive. The night air grew colder, and the fire's crackling was the only sound that dared to exist. Eli stood perfectly still as the circle of silver-skinned figures closed in. Their eyes glowed brighter the closer they came, like icy stars floating through the fog. None of them spoke at first. They moved with the silence of trained warriors. The leader, the one who had called him Skyburner, stopped a few steps away. She was taller than the rest, her armor woven from black scales that shimmered under the firelight. Strange tattoos curved along her neck, glowing faintly blue. In her hand, the curved blade pulsed with energy as if it were alive. Eli's throat was dry. He forced himself to speak. "My name is Eli Carter. I come in peace. My ship crashed." The leader tilted her head, her expression unreadable. She said something to the others in a language filled with sharp tones and melodic hums. One of the huntresses laughed softly, but it wasn't a kind laugh. It sounded more like pity. Eli slowly lowered his flare gun, then placed it on the ground. The leader's eyes followed the motion, cold and calculating. She stepped closer, pointing her blade at the fire. The flames flickered as if bowing to her presence. "Fire," she said suddenly, in broken but clear English. Eli blinked in surprise. You know my language?" She didn't answer. She pointed at the fire again, then at him. Her tone became sharp, accusing. "Fire forbidden, fire." "Call death," Eli frowned. "Call death? What do you mean?" She didn't explain. Instead, she said something to her warriors. Two of them moved forward and grabbed his arms before he could react. They were strong, much stronger than they looked. The cold metal of their armor pressed into his skin. "Wait," he shouted. "I didn't know. I just needed warmth." The leader's expression didn't change. She gave a short command and they dragged him away from the wreck. His boots scraped across the dirt as he struggled. The forest swallowed the glow of his fire, leaving only the mist and the faint sound of chanting voices. After what felt like an hour, they reached an open clearing surrounded by stone pillars carved with glowing runes. The air here was heavy, charged with an unseen energy. At the center stood a large flat stone. An altar, Eli realized with dread. The leader stepped forward and touched the stone's surface. The carvings lit up, spreading light through the ground like veins of fire. She turned toward Eli. "You burn sky," she said softly. "No sky burn you." Eli's heart pounded. He didn't know what that meant, but it didn't sound good. The warriors pushed him to his knees. The leader raised her hand, and one of them placed a glowing shard in her palm. She brought it close to Eli's face. It hummed with strange energy, casting blue light across his skin. "Your fire wake things," she murmured. "Things that sleep." Eli swallowed hard. "Listen, I didn't wake anything. The ground trembled beneath them." A faint rumble rolled through the clearing like distant thunder. The huntresses looked at one another. Some whispered nervously. The leader frowned, tightening her grip on the shard. Another tremor. This one stronger. Dust fell from the trees. Eli glanced around, fear tightening his chest. "What's happening?" The leader looked down at him, her eyes full of something new. Not hatred this time, but worry. "It begin," she said. She barked an order, and the huntresses moved fast. They tied his wrists with vine-like ropes that glowed faintly, then lifted him to his feet. They began running through the forest, dragging him along. The trembling grew stronger with each step, and deep beneath the soil came a low, rumbling growl. Eli stumbled and looked back. His fire, still burning in the distance, flickered violently. The ground around it cracked open, releasing bursts of steam. The leader hissed something to her warriors. "Too late," she whispered in English. Eli's mind raced. What had he done? He was just trying to survive, but it felt like he had broken a law older than time itself. When they reached another ridge, the leader finally stopped. She turned to look down at the valley below. The firelight was fading, but the cracks in the ground were glowing red now, like veins of lava spreading outward. She looked at him, her voice low and serious. "You wake beast of deep," she said. "Now all must run." Eli stared at the cracks, his breath shaking. The ground moved again, and from deep below came the echo of something alive, something massive. He didn't understand their legends, their warnings, or their sacred rules. But in that moment, as the forest began to quake and the blue-eyed huntresses took up their weapons, Eli realized one thing. He hadn't just lit a fire. He had lit the fuse of something waiting for ages to rise. The clearing was filled with a faint, cold light. The trees around Eli shimmered like tall silver blades, and the mist twisted around his feet as if alive. The huntresses dragged him into the heart of their camp, where blue fires burned in stone bowls and strange symbols glowed on the ground. The air smelled like metal and wildflowers, sharp, dangerous, and beautiful. They tied him to a tall stone pillar in the center of the clearing. His arms were bound tight, his back pressed against cold stone that pulsed faintly beneath his skin. Around him, dozens of the huntresses gathered in a wide circle. They watched him without a word, their faces painted in ash and light. The leader, Vara, he had learned her name whispered among the others, stepped forward. Her silver skin glimmered under the firelight, and her glowing eyes locked on his. She held a long staff topped with a blue crystal that hummed softly, like the low tone of a living creature. "Skyburner," she said, her voice calm but strong. "You light forbidden flame?" "Why?" Eli swallowed hard. "I didn't know your rules. My ship crashed. It was cold. I needed warmth to survive." Murmurs rose from the crowd, some sharp and angry, others curious. Vara raised her hand and silence fell again. She walked slowly around him, studying his burned jacket, the dirt on his face, the cut on his forehead. "You bring fire to holy ground," she said. "You wake what sleep?" Eli frowned, confused. "Wake what? What are you talking about?" She didn't answer right away. She tapped the crystal on the ground, and the earth beneath them glowed in lines spreading outward like veins. The glow formed symbols. A massive circle surrounding him, filled with strange shapes and runes. Eli realized with unease that he was standing in some kind of ritual space. Vera pointed to the symbol nearest him, a spiral that ended in a sharp claw. "Long ago," she said, "our ancestors fight the burning god. We trap it under this soil. We guard the flame. Fire call to it. Fire feed it. You bring fire again." Eli's chest tightened. "You mean that thing under the ground?" Vara's eyes flickered. "Yes, it sleep deep but never die. Every flame is a whisper to it. Your fire speak loud." Eli looked down. The ground around him vibrated softly, almost like something breathing far below. He wanted to say it was impossible, that it was just coincidence, but the tremors he felt said otherwise. One of the younger huntresses stepped forward angrily. "He bring curse," she shouted. "We spill his blood, silence the flame." The others echoed her words, their voices rising. "Silence the flame. Silence the flame." Eli's pulse raced. Vara turned toward them and struck her staff into the earth, sending a crack of blue light through the air. The chanting stopped instantly. "No," she said coldly. "Blood will not seal this. Not yet." She turned back to Eli. "You will face the trial of the fire. You light it, now you prove if you control it." Eli's heart pounded. "And if I don't?" Vara's expression didn't change. "Then you burn with it." Two warriors untied him from the pillar and forced him to kneel before a small pit filled with glowing coals. Vara placed her staff in front of him. "Touch it," she said. Eli hesitated. The coals hissed and shimmered, giving off not just heat, but a strange hum that crawled through his bones. "It'll burn me," he said. Vara leaned closer. "If the fire take you, you are cursed. If it bow to you, you are meant." He looked up at her. "Meant for what?" "To bear its mark," she whispered. "To wake it or end it." Eli didn't understand, but he knew refusal wasn't an option. Slowly, he reached out and touched the glowing coals. He expected searing pain, but instead a pulse of warmth spread through his hand. For a moment, the fire glowed brighter and the tremors under the earth stopped. Gasps echoed around the circle. Vara stepped back, her eyes wide. The blue glow in the ground faded slowly, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Then, as suddenly as it had calmed, the tremor returned, stronger than before. The stone beneath him cracked and a deep rumble rolled through the forest. The huntresses shouted in fear. Eli pulled his hand away, terrified. The fire flared up, shooting blue sparks into the air. Vara's expression hardened. "It wake!" she shouted. The beast wake. All around, the ground split open in long red lines. and the air filled with the roar of something ancient moving beneath the surface. Eli realized in horror that whatever was sleeping below, it had felt him. And now, it knew his name. The earth groaned like a living creature. The blue flames that once danced calmly in the ritual pit now turned crimson, burning hotter and brighter until the heat licked the air around Eli. He stumbled back, his boots slipping on the trembling ground as cracks spread outward like the veins of a giant heart. The Huntresses shouted in their language, forming defensive circles around Vera. Their blades glimmered in the flickering light as trees began to sway, and the forest itself seemed to breathe. The night was no longer quiet. It was alive with the roar of something ancient. Eli's instinct screamed at him to run, but Vera grabbed his arm. Her grip was iron. "You stay," she hissed. "You wake it. You must face it." "I didn't mean to wake anything," he shouted, trying to pull free. "I don't even know what it is." Her glowing eyes turned toward the cracks. "You will." A thunderous sound tore through the clearing. The ground split open near the fire pit, throwing chunks of stone into the air. From the chasm rose a massive claw, black, molten at the edges, dripping lava-like liquid. It sank into the soil, dragging the rest of the creature upward. When the beast finally emerged, the world seemed to stop. It was huge, larger than any ship Eli had ever seen. Its scales shimmered between obsidian and fire, its body coiled like a serpent made of living stone. Blue light pulsed beneath its surface, tracing glowing lines up its neck and along its horns. Its head rose above the treetops, and its eyes, burning orbs of molten gold, locked on the fire still burning near the wreckage. The Huntresses dropped to one knee, chanting rapidly. Vara raised her staff, and the blue crystal at its top pulsed, sending waves of light toward the creature. But the light only angered it. With a roar that shattered the air, the beast turned its gaze toward the camp. Eli covered his ears. The sound wasn't just noise, and it was pressure, pain, a vibration that shook his bones. Vera shouted, "Run! To the ridge!" The Huntresses scattered, but Eli couldn't move. His legs felt heavy, his chest tight. The heat was unbearable. A tree behind him burst into flames, showering sparks across the clearing. Vera grabbed him again, yanking him toward the forest path. "Move, Skyburner, move!" Eli stumbled after her as the beast swung its tail, crushing half the camp. The shockwave sent both of them rolling across the ground. Eli hit a rock, pain shooting through his ribs. He forced himself up, gasping for air. All around, trees burned, their silver leaves curling into ash. "Why is it after me?" he shouted. "Because it remembered the flame," Vara answered, running beside him. "It sleep under fire, wake by fire, live for fire." They reached a ridge overlooking the valley. The beast moved below, its massive body sliding between hills like a river of magma. Every few seconds, it unleashed another roar, and the ground beneath them shook again. Vara fell to her knees, pressing her hands to the soil. She began to chant words in her language, fast, desperate, like a prayer or spell. Blue light spread from her palms, racing across the dirt, forming glowing lines that tried to cage the creature in the valley. Eli watched, amazed. "You're trying to trap it?" "Contain it," she said between breaths, "until it forget the flame again." The beast turned its head toward them, its glowing eyes narrowing. It sensed her magic. It roared once more and struck the ground with its tail. The shockwave shattered the glowing cage and threw Vara backward. She hit the ground hard, her staff rolling away. Eli ran to her side. "Vara, hey!" she groaned, blood on her lips. "Go," she said weakly. "Run to your ship. Leave this cursed world." Eli looked back at the burning valley. His ship, or what was left of it, was half buried and on fire. There was no escape. He clenched his fists. "If I started this, I'm not running from it." He grabbed Vara's staff and stood up. The crystal glowed in his hand, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. The beast raised its head higher, curious, sensing the same energy that had woken it. Vara stared at him in shock. "The staff choose you," she whispered. Eli didn't know what that meant, but the heat around him faded for a moment. He looked down at the staff. The blue light had turned orange, the same color as his ship's fire. It hummed softly like it recognized him. He took a deep breath. "You said it listens to fire, right?" Vara nodded weakly. "Then maybe it'll listen to me." He stepped toward the edge of the ridge, holding the glowing staff high. The beast turned fully toward him, its molten eyes locking on his tiny human figure. The world seemed to pause, every sound fading except the deep rumbling growl of the ancient creature. And then, It began to move toward him. The earth trembled with every step. The trees bowed and cracked. The huntresses shouted from afar, their voices drowned by the thunder of its movement. Eli stood his ground, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. He didn't know how, but deep inside he felt it, the same warmth that had saved him that first night. The fire that had nearly killed him now pulsed like a heartbeat in his hands, and as the monstrous shadow loomed closer, Eli whispered to himself, "You wanted fire. Come get it." The beast's roar rolled across the burning forest like a storm. Trees cracked, the ground split open, and rivers of molten light ran through the soil. Eli stood at the edge of the ridge, the blue and orange glow of Vara's staff shining in his hands. The creature's golden eyes locked onto him, full of fury and hunger. Vara crawled up behind him, coughing from the smoke. "You cannot face it alone," she said, voice hoarse. "No one can." Eli didn't take his eyes off the monster. "Then help me," he said. "You know this world. I know tech. Together we stand a chance." Vara stared at him as if trying to understand why a human, fragile and strange, would choose to fight beside her instead of running. Her jaw tightened. "You lit the flame," she said softly, "but you also carry its spirit." The beast let out another roar, a sound that shook the clouds. Its massive form moved closer, each step sinking into the ground with a deep, booming thud. Sparks rained from the sky, and the air grew hotter. Eli turned to Vara. "Listen, my ship's power core still has energy left. If I overload it, it'll explode big enough to tear through that thing's armor." Vara frowned. "A weapon of skyfire." "Exactly," he said. "But I need time, and I need a way to lure it close." Vara's expression hardened. "It hunts light and sound. It hears the flame's call. If we make the flame brighter, it will come." "That's suicide," Eli said. She smiled faintly. "Then we will die as warriors, not prey." Before he could argue, Vara whistled sharply. 3 of her surviving huntresses emerged from the smoke, bloodied but alive. They looked at her for orders. Vara raised her hand, firelight flickering in her silver eyes. "Prepare the path of light," she commanded. They nodded and scattered into the burning forest, moving with purpose. Eli followed Vara down the slope, limping as the earth quaked beneath them. Together they reached the wreck of his ship, half buried, sparking, and glowing faintly from the exposed power core. Eli dropped beside it and began tearing open panels, his hands shaking. Sparks flew as he twisted wires and pressed buttons on a half-broken console. Vara watched silently, gripping her staff like a spear. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Overriding the safety locks," Eli said, voice tight. "Once I trigger it, we'll have less than 2 minutes before it goes off." "And the beast?" "We need to bring it here before that," he said. "You said it follows fire. Then we'll give it a blaze it can't ignore." Vara nodded slowly. "You risk your life for our world, Skyburner." Eli gave a tired smile. "If I'm dying, I'd rather it mean something." Above them, the beast roared again. The sound was closer, too close. The air trembled as its massive form crashed through the trees, molten breath lighting everything it touched. The sky itself glowed red from the heat. Vara ran toward a fallen column and raised her staff. Blue fire burst from its tip, swirling upward like a beacon. Across the ridge, the other huntresses lit similar flames, forming a line of glowing blue fire that curved toward the wreck. The beast turned its head toward the light, its golden eyes narrowing. It hissed, a deep echoing growl that sounded almost like words. Then it began to move fast, its body tearing through trees like paper. "Now!" Vara shouted. "It comes!" Eli finished the last connection, the power core's hum rising to a high-pitched whine. He grabbed Vara's arm. "We have to move." But Vara shook her head. "No, it must see the flame's keeper. It must believe you are still calling it." Eli's heart sank. "You're not staying here." She looked at him with a strange calm. "I woke under this sky to protect it. If I must end under it, so be it." He opened his mouth to argue, but the beast appeared, its head towering above the wreck, molten saliva dripping from its jaws. It stared at Vera, drawn to the blazing blue light of her staff. Vara turned to Eli, her voice steady. "Go, Skyburner. Live for what you burned." Eli hesitated only a moment before running into the forest. Behind him, the air filled with the sound of thunder and fire. He looked back just once, just long, enough to see Vara standing tall before the beast, her armor shining, her staff glowing brighter than the flames around her. Then the world exploded. The shockwave hit Eli like a wall, throwing him into the dirt. The sky turned white, then red. Heat washed over him, followed by silence. For a moment, he thought he was dead. But then he opened his eyes and saw the impossible. The beast still moving in the firelight, wounded but alive, its glowing veins dimming, its body collapsing. And in front of it a single figure still stood, Vara, her silver skin covered in ash, her staff broken but still faintly glowing. Eli tried to rise, but the ground shook again. The beast gave one final roar that faded into a long, dying sigh. Then it fell, the earth swallowing its molten form. The night went quiet once more. The stars above flickered weakly through the smoke. Eli crawled toward Vara, his breath ragged. When he reached her, she looked at him and whispered, "The fire sleeps again." And as the last blue light faded from her staff, Eli realized the alliance that began in fear had ended in something greater than victory. It had ended in understanding. Ash rained from the sky like snow. The forest, once glowing silver, now lay in ruins. Trees burned black, rivers boiled dry, and smoke coiled upward toward the faint morning light. Eli crawled out from beneath a half-buried piece of his ship, coughing hard. Every muscle in his body ached, his vision blurred, but he was alive. He looked around. The valley was gone, turned into a crater of melted earth and scorched stone. In the center of it, the beast's massive body still smoldered. Its scales cracked like shattered glass, its molten veins flickering out one by one. The creature twitched once, then fell still. Eli forced himself to his feet. "Vara," he croaked, his throat dry from smoke. He stumbled across the burning ground, his boots sinking into the soft ash. The heat stung his skin as he climbed over debris, broken armor, and melted rock. Then, near the edge of the crater, he saw her, Vara, lying still, her silver skin dulled by soot and blood. Her staff, split in half, lay beside her hand, its crystal flickering weakly. Eli dropped to his knees beside her. Hey, come on, stay with me." Her eyes opened slightly, their glow faint but still beautiful. "You live," she whispered. "Skyburner lives," he shook his head. "You saved me. You saved your people. Don't talk like that." She smiled weakly. "We saved them, together." He tried to lift her, but she winced in pain. "Easy," he said softly. "We'll get you help." She shook her head slowly. "My people will not return. They run to the mountains. They think the beast takes me." "That is right." Eli frowned, confused. "What are you saying?" She looked up at the dark sky, where smoke and fire met the first rays of dawn. "Every fire needs a keeper," she said. "To sleep again, it must feed one last flame." Eli's chest tightened. "No, you're not feeding anything. You're coming with me." Vara reached for the broken staff, her fingers trembling. "Its power still burn. If I merge it with my spirit, I seal the beast again." Eli grabbed her hand. "No, you already did enough. Let it die." She looked at him sadly. "It cannot die, Skyburner. It only sleep. I keep it sleeping, or it wake again when the next fire lights." Eli clenched his jaw. "Then I'll stay. I'll do it." Her smile was small but genuine. "You are not of this world. The flame will consume you. But me, it knows me." She pulled her hand free gently, placing the broken crystal against her chest. Blue light spread across her skin, glowing through the cracks like rivers of life. The air around her shimmered, bending like heat waves. Eli shook his head in disbelief. There has to be another way. Please. She looked at him, her silver eyes soft. You came from the stars, she said quietly. You carry the fire, but you use it to save, not destroy. That is what makes you different. Her voice grew faint. Tell my sisters. Tell them the flame chose peace. Before Eli could speak, the ground rumbled again. The beast's cracked chest glowed faintly, its heart, massive and molten, beginning to stir. Vera took a deep breath, lifted the staff's crystal, and drove it into her chest. Blue fire erupted from her body, swirling upward in a blinding spiral. The flames danced around her like ribbons of light, forming a vortex that wrapped around the fallen creature. The beast's golden eyes flared open one last time, then dimmed as the fire consumed it whole. Eli covered his face as the shockwave blasted outward. When the light finally faded, silence returned. The crater glowed faintly blue, and where Vera had stood there was now only a circle of soft, shimmering ash. He dropped to his knees. Vera. His voice broke. The wind carried the ash upward, scattering it like glowing dust into the dawn. Then as he watched, something shimmered in the air before him. The bracelet she had always worn, made of woven silver and engraved with strange runes, floated down and landed in his palm. Eli held it tightly. He didn't understand the words inscribed on it, but when he touched it he heard a faint whisper, her voice gentle and distant. The fire sleeps, but it remembers you. Tears blurred his vision. He slipped the bracelet onto his wrist. The metal was warm, alive. He looked around the ruins, the smoke still curling upward. Somewhere beneath the scorched ground, the creature slept again, but this time its guardian was gone. The sun finally broke through the clouds, painting the wasteland in gold. Eli stood quietly, the wind blowing through his burned clothes, the bracelet glowing faintly on his wrist. He whispered into the silence. Rest now, Vara, the fire's safe. And as he turned away from the crater, the ashes rose behind him, swirling in the light, as if the planet itself bowed in farewell to its last huntress. Weeks passed. The storm that followed the explosion had finally faded, leaving behind a quiet world of gray skies and soft rain. The once burning valley was now calm, covered in blackened soil and blue mist. The forests were growing again, young shoots glowing faintly in the dim light as if the planet itself was healing. Eli Carter built a small camp on a nearby ridge. The wreck of his ship was beyond repair, but he had managed to set up a signal beacon powered by the few cells that had survived the blast. Every night he sat beside a new fire, smaller, gentler, watching its flicker dance on the bracelet Vara had left behind. He didn't light it for warmth anymore. He lit it for her. He had stopped counting days. Each sunrise looked the same, pale and distant. He spent his mornings scavenging through the ruins, gathering supplies, repairing equipment, and burying the remains of what once was the Huntresses' camp. Sometimes he found bits of their armor, or carved stones that glowed faintly when he touched them. He always placed them on a mound overlooking the crater. It wasn't just a burial site. It was a promise. On the 15th morning, the sky shimmered. He thought at first it was just heat haze, but then the shimmer grew brighter, like the air itself was splitting apart. The bracelet on his wrist warmed suddenly. He stood up, heart pounding. A beam of light descended into the crater, and from it emerged a shadow. Tall, graceful, familiar. Eli took a step forward, his breath catching. The figure moved closer, walking through the smoke. When she stepped into the light, his heart nearly stopped. Vera. Her silver skin glowed faintly blue, her hair drifting like threads of mist. But she wasn't the same. Her eyes now burned with soft flame, and faint lines of light moved under her skin like living energy. She looked, half spirit, half alive. Eli whispered, "It can't be you." She smiled faintly. "It is what remains." He froze, torn between joy and disbelief. You died. You became part of the fire. I saw it." Vara stepped closer, her presence radiating calm warmth. "I did," she said softly. "But the flame does not end. It changes shape. It remembers." Eli wanted to reach out to touch her hand, but he hesitated. She was glowing like the fire itself, untouchable yet familiar. Why come back? He asked quietly. Her gaze turned to the horizon. The seal holds, but not forever. The fire sleeps deep, yet it listens. And when the stars speak of danger again, it will wake. Eli frowned. So what am I supposed to do? She looked at him, and for a moment the same warrior he had met that first night was there again. Fierce, determined, proud. You carry its mark, she said, pointing to the bracelet. You are the next watcher. The fire chose you. He looked down at the bracelet glowing faintly beneath the rain. I'm not like you, he said. I'm just a pilot. I can't guard a planet, Vera smiled softly. Neither could I once. But the fire teaches those who listen. For a moment silence filled the air. Only the soft rain and the faint hum of energy around her could be heard. Then she reached out her hand, her fingers passing through his chest like warm light. When the stars fall again, light the flame, she whispered. And I will answer. Her form began to fade, dissolving into golden embers that floated upward. Eli stepped forward, panic in his voice. Wait, don't go yet. Her voice echoed faintly, softer now, but filled with peace. The fire sleeps, Skyburner. Guard it well. And then she was gone, her light rising into the gray sky, disappearing among the clouds. Eli stood in the rain for a long time, the bracelet still warm against his skin. He looked out over the crater, now calm and quiet, and felt something shift inside him. She was gone, yes, but she was also everywhere. The light in the mist, the warmth of the ground, the hum in the air. Days later, a rescue ship finally broke through the clouds. Its bright white light swept over the valley, and a voice crackled over the comms. Survivor found! Human life sign detected. Eli looked up, shielding his eyes. He could leave now. He could go home. But when he turned to glance at the crater one last time, he froze. There, on the ridge, stood a faint silhouette, tall, glowing, watching him. Vara. She didn't move, didn't speak. She simply raised her hand in silent farewell. Eli felt something tighten in his chest. He lifted his hand too, the way she had taught him. Palm open, fingers bent slightly, the gesture of peace used by her people. Then the wind picked up, carrying a whisper through the mist. Guard the flame. He stepped onto the rescue shuttle, but even as it rose into the sky, he kept his eyes on the planet below. On the forests reborn, on the crater now covered in blue light, and on the faint shadow of a huntress who would forever watch from the fire. And somewhere deep beneath the soil, the sleeping beast let out a slow rumbling breath, not in anger, but in peace. For the flame now had two keepers, one of the stars and one of the ashes.